I did used to read a lot. That's why I was like, I like hearing about the books and everything.
Yeah.
But as far as movies, I love the time travel theory they had in Primer, which was just, that movie was brilliant. Shane Carruth was great.
Hopefully we can get him on for an interview sometime because he was fantastic.
I've been twice now trying to get him on.
Well,
and so,
meanwhile, we do have an interview with someone else, though.
Yeah, so we're going to wrap up our time travel talk, and we will definitely hit the subject again with a bigger crew. We just want to kind of tip the iceberg at the end of the year we'll be time traveling in 2014 next time you see us. So we were sent a movie to watch called Crave, and it was really interesting, and we're fortunate enough to have the director, Charles, we'll have to find out how to say his last name. It's de Lauzirika, I think.
Classic.
Awesome movie. Really good job. So Kathy and I are going to have him on the phone right after this. So Kathy looks like she killed a Muppet for her headpiece today.
Well, in the movie, the girl's wearing the beret and her thing. So, I always try to dress up something like the movie. So.
All right, so we got to watch this movie called Crave, which was really awesome. But we have the director on the phone. Is he ready?
Yep.
Hi there, Charles. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you now. There's a little bit of a glitch there, but now I got you guys. Are you there?
Just a second. Our volume out here's a little low.
Can you hear me?
And so we're going to talk about Crave real quick. So the idea of Crave is that we follow this guy around.
He's a crime photographer who sells pictures.
Yeah.
That's how he makes his living.
And he kind of has this whole little world and adventures in his head.
Yeah, he thinks he's a vigilante that can stop crime and be the big guy, but then he really doesn't do anything about it. He actually lets people get hurt.
But one of the most interesting aspects of this movie is you can't always tell what's going on in his head sometimes, as opposed to what's happening in the real world. And so from that narrative standpoint, it was pretty. It's got to be a complex movie to tell because we have some interesting theories we want to go over with once we get the volume up out here.
I have to watch it again just so I can make sure what I thought was real was actually in his head versus what I thought was in his head was actually real. Because I couldn't tell the difference. I mean, I was a little, not lost, but it was interesting because I had to, think about it.
Well, you and I had completely different viewpoints on the film. When I walked in and told you that I thought most of it was in his head.
I thought it was real until you told me that. Then now I have to watch it again.
All right, so, Charles, can you hear us? Can we hear you out here?
I can hear you guys fine. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we'll go ahead and just leave that door open because we can hear him through there.
Okay.
All right, so, first off, how do you say your last name? Because I think I massacred it.
You're really close. It's Lauzirika.
All right.
Yeah.
So, the question I have, all right, we call this Spoilers Review Show because we do talk about a lot of things that other people may not. But this was a really hard movie to try to approach to make from a visual and emotional standpoint because things going on in his head, things like that. How did you approach making this film the way that you did?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it began with the first writer who came up with the idea, Robert Lawton, which was his pitch to me was Travis Bickle meets Walter Mitty. So right there you have kind of like psychopath vigilante on the one side, and you've got like a man, kind of a nebbish wimp who fantasizes about a bigger life on the other hand. So he fused those two together, and we have Aiden in Crave. And so, from my point of view, you guys were talking about how much of the film is real and how much is fantasy. I mean, for me, it's like 90% real, 10% fantasy. But the 10% fantasy is definitely the fantasy part is definitely the most destructive and powerful part of the film because it influences and guides him through all of his decision making, which tends to be pretty tragic.
So, you were right, Kathy, because my theory was that the entire relationship with the girl took place in his head until he just snapped towards the end. And Kathy was like, no, that really happened. But I couldn't understand why they would keep going back together when they never really left on good terms.
Well, I mean, I have to tell you, there's kind of a part to this film that's autobiographical, the relationship part of it, and not directly, but it's inspired by. And I feel like people who leave on bad terms still have longing for each other after a while, and even though it's compressed into a shorter time frame in this film, I do feel like there's back and forth, and obviously she saw something in him to begin with, so that's why at the end we give a little bit of a sense of hope, even though we know that hope is probably not going to fulfill itself.
Yeah, that's why I really like that part of the relationship where, things aren't going well, but you still want to keep trying, and you keep trying, and you keep trying. And so I was really drawn into Aiden's character and actually liked him and made me want to like him and follow what he was doing. And then what happened with the ex-boyfriend that she went back to, and he ends up killing him. I felt so bad for him. I was like, oh my God, hide, somebody's going to find you. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's kind of that was the interesting part of the film for me, was the whole third act of all of these kind of unfortunate decisions that Aiden made. Now he sort of has to do this sort of karmic obstacle course to get through just problem after problem. It just seems to be getting worse and worse and worse as he's trying to make it better. And yeah, I mean, he made some pretty unfortunate decisions, but of course that's where the dramatic part of the end of the movie comes from.
Yeah, that's the one question, I guess, our spoiler thing. Did Ron Perlman know that he was the guy who killed the guy?
Well, I think that goes beyond spoiler territory. That's interpretation. I like to keep the ending of this film ambiguous and leave it to you to decide who's that.
I liked it
at the end.
I like those endings.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like the fact that it was over because you were right. You had a character that we really liked and we really felt for, and we were like, we all have those motions where we're in the subway and we see something going on and we want to go intervene, but we don't live in a time when you can just do that safely or without them charging you, or maybe they have something. I liked his motivations, but watching him kind of deteriorate over the movie, it made me really sad, especially towards the end when he was totally gone. And I like the fact that I think it kind of happened when he first picked up the gun.
Yeah, I think that's where it kind of snapped, where he actually, I can actually do something now, and what am I going to do? And what am I going to do? When it actually goes off, I think that's when he freaks out completely, and that's when I was just like, oh my God, he's going to die. Internally, or something, he was going to go to jail, or something bad was going to happen to him, and he was like my brother. I don't know. I really like that character.
Well, that's the interesting thing about this is that, the original version I had in my head was a bit darker and more having Aiden as sort of a misfit and a guy that was very introverted and strange and really twisted. And Josh Lawson, who plays Aiden, really brought kind of a likability or a relatability to Aiden, so that we don't just watch Aiden from afar as a freak. He is like a friend, or he is someone we can identify with. So we do feel sorry, or we are kind of rooting for him through these ups and downs. So I think that was the best thing that Josh kind of brought to the role, was making him a little bit more human and relatable than kind of the twisted ruin of a man that I had in my brain originally.
Can I ask you a question about directing and how much leeway do you give actors? Like you just said, Josh went a different way than you had expected. Do you just let them run with it, or do you just kind of tell them not to do that? I mean, how does that relationship work between actor and actor?
Yeah, it's a day-by-day thing. I mean, it depends on the demands of the scene and the character and the script and everything. So just so long, in my point of view, so long as they hit the basics of what we need to tell the story, if they want to play a little bit within that, or they want to reinterpret a little bit, I'm happy to have them explore. And that's why you do multiple takes. I mean, some takes are directly 100% what's on the page, and some are 50%. Some go off and play a little bit. And then we kind of, in editing or even throughout the course of shooting, we see how things evolve, and that's where you just kind of have to pick which path your movie's on, and where the movie ends is rarely where you thought it was going to end when you started it.
It's kind of like writing a story or a book or a novel. It's like you just let your characters just go through.
It's like having a child, basically. When your baby is born, that your baby is going to be president of the United States, and then it turns out not so much. Maybe it's going to be something else. It's going to find some other way in life, and that's kind of when you make a movie, it's like you start off thinking, oh my God, this is going to be Best Picture winner. It's going to be the top grossing film of all time, but that's ridiculous. like day by day, you start to realize, oh, it's actually going to be its own thing, and that's kind of where I think every film, it kind of starts with the best of intentions and ends up being uniquely what it is, and then it's your choice and your job as a parent to guide your film as best you can. So I want to let the film live on its own. I mean, I let other people's decisions come in and choices and their ideas come in a bit. I just have to kind of guide and steer that as much as I can to get it to where I thought it should go.
Well, you did have a really good eye in this movie, and when you talked about how you had a darker original vision, I can kind of see that because there were some really gruesome parts of this movie with some great special effects and blood and all sorts of stuff that I like in movies.
Mm-hmm.
What do you have coming up next? Because, I mean, you just have such a great eye. I want to know what you're going to do so I know what I can go look for in the future.
Oh, well, thanks for saying that. I mean, the whole reason I made Crave was actually to prove that I could direct this other project I've been developing for the last 5 years, which is a science fiction story based on a Philip K. Dick short story called I Hope I Shall Arrive Soon. So I basically had been attached to that, and I was developing that, and as that became bigger and more ambitious. Basically, it was asked me basically would I prove myself by making a smaller, cheaper, faster film to show that I could actually do a feature. So Crave was sort of the test film.
How long did it take you to do Crave?
All told, a little over 4 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it took a while. I mean, I don't know if you know, but it's like my day job is that I produce behind-the-scenes documentaries for the making of big movies, and so that's kind of like what pays my bills. So it's like I did a little bit of Crave, and I'd go off and do DVD stuff, and then Crave, and then DVD, and back and forth. So, it kind of limped along over the 4 years, but I kept having to go back to the day job just for my own life, but also to help pay for Crave.
Yeah, you got to have a job that pays the bills.
Yeah.
That's right.
And so how does that all work? Because I was reading something about the Philip K. Dick book that you're doing in raising money and all that. I mean, is that just like a regular entrepreneurial process where you just have to go out and find investors who are interested in it? Or is there a whole different method to that when it comes to movies and making movies?
Well, because we're looking at a budget that's significantly bigger than Crave's, we're starting at a studio level now with this, and we've got a really great script that I think we're all happy with on our side of the team making the film. But you kind of go out to the studios, you see who's interested, you see what notes they might have, you see kind of what path you might pursue with them, and then if that doesn't go all the way, then you shift gears into something else: independent financing, foreign financing. And that's kind of the process we're in now. We're trying to gauge interest and gauge what path forward we have to go to get the money to make this movie. And I would assume that maybe sometime next year we'll have a really strong sense of how we're going to do it.
Great.
Well, I'm excited to see what's going to come from your future because I will get really rabid about certain directors like Tim Burton, and I'll watch everything they do. And it's just the movie has to touch me, and this one I really liked the way it was done because I'm a very visual type person.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you for taking time to be on the show with us today, talk about Crave and all these other fun things. And it was just a lot of fun. We really liked the movie. I think we're going to end up giving it like a 5 out of 5 probably.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Thank you. I can use it. I can use a 5 out of 5 right about now.
All right. Well, we're glad to give it to you. So thanks again for being on the show. And maybe we'll try again in the future when you're closer to this other project. We'll have all sorts of fun. And
please
keep up
do.
the good work, dude.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That's awesome.